of the campaign. Earlier this morning, Brock Turner was released from jail after only 3 months. He was convicted of 3 serious felony sex crimes. Rather than impose the minimum 2-year sentence, Judge Persky bent over backwards to grant Turner probation. His victim did not receive justice. This
more time on grand theft than he did for rape.
This sentence also sent a dangerous message. To victims of sexual violence, it sent the message, don't bother to call the police because you will not get justice. And to potential perpetrators, it sent the message, don't worry, the courts will have your back. This made all women less safe at Stanford, where I teach, and at other colleges and universities around the state of California and really around the whole country. This was not Judge Persky's only instance of overly lenient treatment for sex offenders and domestic abusers. On the contrary, this campaign has brought forth case after case showing that he has a pattern of bias in favor of those accused of violence against women that is very disturbing. Just last week, the media reported on the case of another college athlete, this time a football player at Foothill College named Akeka Gunderson, who severely beat and choked his girlfriend and pushed her head first out of a car. Judge Persky unbelievably imposed no sentence at all on this convicted felon, instead allowing him to move to Hawaii unmonitored and unsupervised for over a year. Judge Persky did not even place him on probation. The state of Hawaii was never informed that California had sent a felon to move there. He ended up getting arrested again for domestic violence in Washington, a third state where he also had no business being. We are calling today on the California Attorney General to investigate whether Judge Persky sending a domestic abuser convicted of a felony out of state without supervision violated the federal Interstate Compact on Adult Offender Supervision and the California Penal Code. We believe that the handling of this case was not lawful, and we need to get to the bottom of this, and we also need to find out whether Judge Persky has done this in other instances. You may have heard that Judge Persky has requested a transfer to the Civil Division. It is important to understand that this is a temporary voluntary transfer and that he did not resign from being a judge.
He gets paid anyhow.
Judge Persky can transfer back to the Criminal Division anytime he chooses. Moreover, one of Judge Persky's most disturbing instances of bias came in a civil case that he presided over concerning a 17-year-old alleged victim of a gang rape by members of the De Anza College baseball team. Judge Persky allowed the defendants to show the jury highly prejudicial photos of the victim taken nearly a year after the crime, showing her in a revealing outfit, supposedly to prove that she did not actually have PTSD from being gang raped because she looked happy in the pictures. I want to say a word now to the people who oppose the recall. Some have said, well, yes, the sentence for Turner was bad, and yes, he acted improperly by sending Mr. Gunderson to Hawaii, and yes, sentencing another defendant to only 1 night in jail for child pornography, which is also a felony, that was terrible. And yes, he does seem to have an issue with treating these crimes against women not very seriously, but in their view, women will just have to accept all of these injustices for some higher principle of judicial independence. We disagree.
No means no.
Women have a fundamental right to expect fairness and justice from the courts of law. Judicial independence is important, but it depends on a lack of bias. A biased judge is a threat to the entire legal system. Bias, like Judge Persky's, destroys the trust of the people in the fairness and the integrity of the process. There is no independence where there is bias. Judge Persky's bias is a threat to the rule of law. And we will continue until he is no longer a judge. We need many judges who understand sexual assault and domestic violence. Judge Persky does not. And that is why so many of our community leaders, elected officials, and respected women's organizations like the National Organization for Women and the Feminist Majority, as well as young millennial women's organizations like Girl Cult, are here today standing with Emily Doe and standing with the recall. But let me just say this, the most important supporters of the recall campaign are all of you, the voters of Santa Clara County. Santa Clara County deserves a better judge than Judge Persky. And that is why we are asking for your signature on the recall petition this April, and why we will be asking for your vote against Judge Persky in November of 2017. Thank you. And I'm going to introduce now a very brave young survivor of sexual assault. As you know, Mr. Turner's victim is choosing to remain anonymous, although she shared her incredibly important words with the world. But we have some other survivors of sexual assault from Harvard and from University of California, Berkeley, who are here to share their thoughts with us. So first I'm going to introduce Camilla Willingham, who is a survivor from Harvard Law School. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Camila Willingham. I'm co-founder of an organization called Survivors Eradicating Rape Culture, and I'm one of the survivors who is featured in the film The Hunting Ground. I was sexually assaulted while I was studying at Harvard Law School. Like Emily Doe, I was unconscious when it happened. Unlike Emily Doe, I woke up to being violated, not by a stranger, but by a classmate and someone who I'd trusted. He'd also undressed and assaulted a friend of mine the same night, but she didn't wake up like I did. There were no other witnesses. It was just my word against his, as it so often is. The decision to report my assault to my school and to the police was not an easy one. I reported even though I knew how low prosecution and conviction rates are. I know how hard it is to prove a rape beyond a reasonable doubt when our fact finders live in a culture that tells us to doubt everything a woman says if she claims she was raped. I knew that in order to have a shot at justice, you have to prove not only what was done to you, but also that you weren't asking for it. As I focused to keep painful details fresh in my mind for 4 years while I was awaiting trial, I braced myself for an interrogation of my character, how much I drank, how promiscuous I was perceived to be. As if any of that could justify or excuse his actions. Sexual assault is never the victim's fault. No one is ever asking to be sexually assaulted. I chose to place my faith in the authorities because I thought what was done to me was outrageous, and I trusted the legal system to validate that outrage and address it. I thought that even though the process would be long and humiliating and painful, my assailant would be held accountable and other people would be spared from the violation that I suffered. I was wrong. My criminal case resulted in a conviction on a lesser included offense, a misdemeanor simple assault. He would have been punished more harshly if he'd simply gotten drunk and gotten into a bar fight that night instead. After a short term of probation, he graduated from Harvard Law School this summer. Going through these legal processes is incredibly difficult for sexual assault victims. It is not fun. For many, it feels like a second rape. You're forced to draw out and relive each painful detail, cooperate while the system dissects your violation in order to determine whether it happened and whether you secretly wanted it. The predictable failure of the criminal justice system in my case confirmed what I feared to be true, that certain people in our society are simply not valued, not safe, and not protected by our laws, that I was not valued or safe or protected. That is why rape victims don't report. What a terrible message to receive from a system that in theory is supposed to protect you, that your dignity is negligible, as if you are collateral damage in some promising young man's development. This is precisely the message that Judge Persky sent to Emily Doe and to all survivors when he decided that the interests of justice required going easy on Brock Turner, who took Brock Turner, who took zero responsibility for raping an unconscious woman behind a dumpster, even after being caught in the act and convicted of 3 felonies. Brock maintained that what we like to call rape was in fact an innocent mistake, blaming it on the alcohol and promiscuity. And Judge Persky decided to take his word for it. I hope Judge Persky knows that he is as much part of the problem as Brock Turner is. He is the reason more victims don't report these crimes. Because even if the police believe you, even if the prosecutors believe you, even if against all odds the jurors believe you, at the end of the day that can all be undermined by a judge like Aaron Persky, whose objectivity is clouded by rape culture. I hope that more victims and survivors are able to find the peace that they deserve and know that they and their stories matter, regardless of how our flawed justice system treats them. If more judges bother to educate themselves on the realities of gendered violence, there would be fewer Brock Turners in the world. There would be fewer men who know that they can claim they mistook unconsciousness for sexual consent and get away with it. If judges valued survivors more, maybe the Brock Turners of the world would value them as well. That's why I support this recall of Judge Persky. Thank you. Thank you. Now I'd like to introduce my friend, fellow survivor, and amazing activist, Sophie Karasek.
Good morning, and thank you for your attendance at this very important rally to recall Judge Persky. My name is Sophie Karasek, and I want to preface this by saying that I'm here today not to represent End Rape on Campus, an organization which I co-founded, but I am here solely as a 2015 graduate, survivor, and Title IX complainant against the University of California, Berkeley. When I was a freshman at Cal, I was sexually assaulted on an off-campus trip by the leader of the student organization that I went there with. I had just joined, and shortly after it happened, I learned that he was not the first person in the club who had been assaulted by him. Less than a month later, he assaulted yet another woman in the organization, and eventually 4 of us reported him to the UC Berkeley administration. Berkeley never contacted us to participate in any kind of investigation, and resolved the case instead using an early resolution process. He was put on disciplinary probation, graduated, and now he attends Harvard Law School. He was never held accountable. I didn't report my assault to the police. Going through the criminal justice process is a very difficult one, particularly if you're working or studying full-time. The last thing that I wanted to do was to be part of a long and agonizing criminal process. And unlike Emily Doe, I had neither forensic evidence nor witnesses. Our culture is also quick to blame survivors for being assaulted or to make the problem disappear. Well, we don't have all the evidence. Or, well, it's he said, she said. When I first read the survivor's impact statement, I was horrified by the injustices that she had endured. But I was not surprised. If anything, it was unusual that her perpetrator was even convicted. I firmly believe that this only happened because of the 2 bicyclists who saw it. If they had not been there, we would not be here right now. We would not be talking about this because no one would have believed her. Nobody would have believed her. That has to change. The survivor in this case had so much evidence, both witnesses and forensics, and she was denied justice. If someone who had such a clear case was failed by the system, then what hope is there for the rest of us? In the United States of America, laws against sexual violence mean nothing if the judges who enforce them are biased, like Judge Persky. Most survivors do not report to law enforcement, and people like Judge Persky are the reason why. Judge Persky denied Emily Doe the validation that what happened to her was not okay, that it was wrong, and sent the message instead, loud and clear, that if you have a bright future ahead of you, then you have a get-out-of-jail-free card for rape. This has been the status quo for far too long, but in November 2017, we are going to recall Judge Persky. And when we do that, we will change the landscape nationwide. To survivors everywhere, I believe you. It's not your fault, and you are not alone. Thank you. And now, I want to introduce a tireless ally for survivors of sexual assault, Senate Pro Tem Kevin De Leon.
Thank you so very much, Sophie. First and foremost, to Camilla and to Sophie, thank you very much for sharing your incredible story. You are two incredibly courageous women who are role models, not just for women, but are role models for young men as well, nationwide. My name is Kevin De Leon, and I am the president of the California State Senate. And as the author of the nation's groundbreaking Yes Means Yes law that defines sexual consent on college campuses, but more importantly, as a father of a daughter who recently graduated from college, I was both outraged and appalled, and let me just add as well, repulsed by Judge Persky's decision to give a rapist, Brock Turner, such a lenient sentence. We need more judges, and we need more elected officials who are committed to both preventing as well as deterring rape and sexual assault. Whether by enacting more tough laws in legislatures throughout the country or through fierce penalties in the judicial system through the courts. Brock Turner's release today, only after 3 months in county jail, sits in strike contrast to Raul Ramirez, a 32-year-old immigrant from El Salvador, who admitted to sexually assaulting his female roommate. Ramirez pleaded guilty, he apologized, he even cried with remorse. Judge Persky gave Ramirez 3 years in state prison. But for Brock Turner, a privileged fellow Stanford elite athlete who refused to accept any responsibility, who refused to apologize or show remorse, and who dragged his victim through a trial, serves only 3 months in jail for his vicious, brutal sexual assault. Now, there's something wrong with that. Don't we agree? Judge Persky is biased. Judge Persky has put the interests of convicted abusers ahead of justice for victims of sexual assault and domestic violence. And Judge Persky's decision illustrated his severe lack of good judgment or a moral compass. And to me, it shows that he's fundamentally unfit to serve on the bench. For these reasons and many more, I am pleased to stand here with each and every one of you, the elected officials, the activists, the advocates, but especially the courageous young women who showed the guts and courage to show a nation and worldwide audience and to share what happened to them, to be in solidarity, and to support the recall and ouster of failed Judge Persky. Simply put, he's unworthy of the robe he wears and the bench that he sits on. And I want to say finally that this has been characterized, understandably so, as a women's issue, because it is women who have been the victims of the majority of these sexual assaults and crimes. But this is a man's issue as well. Because it is the men who are the vast majority of the sexual perpetrators of these assaults and crimes towards women. And that's why it's important that fathers, boyfriends, members of Congress and Senate and legislature, mayors and city councils and brothers and cousins and uncles and grandfathers, straight, LGBTQ, Latino, African American, white, racially mixed, Asian American, all men should rise together in solidarity and elevate our voice with the collective voices of these young women, these courageous women who have the absolute courage to stand before the cameras and bare their souls and show their vulnerabilities so they can defend other women who have been victims and other women who perhaps will be victims in the future. It is our responsibility to stand with them. Whether they want us to stand side by side as equal partners, will they want us to stand before them to protect and defend, or whether they want us to stand right behind them to be their backup when they need backup. That's what we're here for, and I want to thank the organizers of this incredible event, and we will be there to make sure that Judge Persky does not continue to perpetuate the unjust actions that he has committed himself to on the bench further again. With that, thank you very much. Thank you. I just want to very quickly just share just a few words in Spanish. Very quickly. Estoy aquí para prestar mi solidaridad con estas mujeres valientes, hoy día, alzando mi voz en solidaridad con cada persona, con estas víctimas de acoso sexual. Son los hombres y el papel nuestro como hombres, como padres, como novios, hijos, primos, tíos, amigos, es hacer todo lo posible para defender los derechos de los más vulnerables y los más marginados aquí en este gran país. Y por eso nosotros como hombres nos toca un papel muy especial, hacer todo lo posible para lograr algo que es justo y digno para estas mujeres. Por eso estoy aquí para alzar mi voz y repudiar y denunciar las acciones de este juez, Judge Persky. Muchas gracias. Next, we have a good friend, an exciting, one of the newest members of Congress, who I know who stands just as strong as I am with the solidarity of women. He's a solid voice that we have in Washington, D.C. That is Congressman Eric Swalwell. Eric?
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you to the organizers. Thank you to the brave survivors who have come forward. My name's Eric Swalwell. I represent a congressional district in the Bay Area. And we come here today because there is no justice in the light sentence and early release of Brock Turner. No justice. But we come here together to find justice in the early release of Judge Persky. It is time for his early release. But I don't come here as a member of Congress. I come here as a former prosecutor. For 7 years, I worked as a prosecutor in Oakland. And for 7 years, I looked many young women in the eyes and made the prosecutor's promise. And the promise goes like this. I know you have been through something horrible, and it's going to get worse before it gets better. But if you come along on this journey, the painful meetings to recount what happened, facing your assaulter in court, facing the community, we will hold that individual accountable, we'll protect the public, and hopefully we will find you some measure of closure. And it's hard, because after the horrible act, the indignity of being assaulted, you have to tell a police officer. And then the police officer tells you you have to take a sexual assault exam, a very personal, invasive sexual assault exam. And then, if your case gets charged, as Sophie mentioned, so many of them don't, you have to go again tell a prosecutor. And then you have to go to court. And you sit in court with the person who assaulted you sitting across from you. And you tell your story again. And then this perpetrator, his attorney, gets to stand up and ask all sorts of questions to imply that it was your fault. You were drinking. You were being promiscuous. You were asking for it. And after you go through that and you sit through that and you ask yourself, well, was it my fault? Did I ask for this? And it wasn't? No. Then a jury has to deliberate. And I've seen the anxiety of these young women as a jury deliberates. All the questions, again, going through their head. And then the jury comes back. And unanimously, 12 peers from your community say, Brock Turner, guilty. You are guilty. You violated Emily Doe. You're guilty. You see a defendant held accountable. You start to believe that the community is going to be protected. And you are on your first step toward closure. And then at that sentencing, you have a judge, Judge Persky, who before this even happened, let another college athlete off, no jail time, out of the state after he beat his girlfriend. Before this ever happened, allowed evidence after the fact of a sexual assault to suggest that the young woman was promiscuous and did not suffer any trauma after her assault. And he takes away from our community the justice it deserves. He takes away from the public the protection that they need. And he takes away from Emily Doe the closure that the prosecutor promised to her. So the question here today is quite simple. Is Judge Persky's job more important than protecting victims in our community? No! Is Judge Persky on the bench to protect athletes and put them first, or to put victims of sexual assault first? Are we powerless? No! Are we powerless? No! Can we bring justice for Emily Doe? Yes! Can we be as courageous as Emily was when she went to the police, went to the exam, went to court, told her story, and then wrote a letter and again faced her defendant? Can we show that courage? Yes! Well, we're going to need that courage, because recalling a judge is not easy. It's an extreme measure. But this judge deserves a recall, and the community needs one if we're going to be more protected. So are you ready to give Judge Persky the early release that he deserves? Yes! Is it time to release Judge Persky? Yes! Well, thank you so much again for being here today. And a member of Congress who has stood with me in calling for this recall is a colleague of mine who also represents a Bay Area congressional district, Congressman Jerry McNerney.
Good morning, everyone. I want to thank my colleague Eric Swalwell, who's been a stalwart colleague and on this issue and on the issue of gun violence. We need folks like Eric Swalwell to stand up on these issues. Thank you, Eric. I'm here today to join the effort and raise my hands in the effort to remove Judge Persky from the bench. Our system needs judges who fully understand the crime of sexual assault, who fully understand domestic violence, and the effect that these crimes have on the victims that they perpetrate against. It's essential in these cases for our judges to give unbiased decisions. Yes. Judge Persky has a long-standing record of doing exactly the opposite. Now, I can give you some examples. We'll start with Brock Turner, but we all know what happened in that case. He got 3 months for a vicious sexual assault. But we also have Tony Chang, who got a weekend in jail, a weekend pass in jail following his conviction of a violent sexual assault and battery against his then fiancée. He got off for a weekend pass. Judge Persky has repeatedly shown bias favoring men in cases of sexual assault. When we can't trust our judges to carry out justice in cases of sexual assault, then our justice system has failed. So I ask you a question. Should Judge Persky remain on the bench?
No!
Does everybody agree Judge Persky should not remain on the bench?
Yes!
Well then, whoever said no, that he should not remain on the bench, we need to sign the petition to make sure his name appears on the ballot in next year's election. We want to have voters, we want to give voters the opportunity to decide. So next I'd like to introduce a man who has served his community faithfully for over 3 decades. Senator Jim Beal, an outstanding public service who in 2014 fought to extend the criminal statutes of limitations for victims of sexual abuse through Audrey's Law and the SB 926. Senator Jim Beal.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. I'm Jim Bell. I'm a state senator. I represent about half the population in Santa Clara County, and about almost 1 million people I represent. And my district and Santa Clara County is unsafe because of Judge Persky sitting on the bench right now. Here, we're unsafe because people cannot trust going to the police and reporting rape and sexual assault crimes in our county, and we need to rectify that situation immediately. And what I'm asking Judge Persky to do is stop thinking about judicial independence. You don't have judicial independence, and that does not mean you have judicial immunity. And Judge Persky should right now, today, go into his office, write a letter, and resign from the bench now. Now, and if he doesn't do that, I'm asking people in my district and the rest of Santa Clara County, when his name's on the ballot, don't vote for Judge Persky. Send a blank ballot in to send him a message. And if we don't get the message across then I'm going to organize my entire district, and we're going to walk precincts, put up signs, have fundraisers to recall Judge Persky. We're going to recall him, and we're going to work hard to make sure that happens and get the voters in our county to not have a judge. And I'm going to tell the probation department they better get their act together also. County probation. Well, we have a young woman that was not given justice in our county. And I think our judicial system is under question in this county.
Everywhere.
I'm urging women to run for our judiciary in this county. We need to have more women elected in this county, and we need some judges that can respond to this kind of situation in an appropriate manner, in a fair judicial manner, and operate in a fair way for our people. Because if we don't, we're not going to have safety in our county. Now, it's my pleasure. I want to introduce a guest, our Congresswoman Loretta Sanchez. Loretta?
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator. I'm Congresswoman Loretta Sanchez from Orange County, California. I've been working on the issue of eliminating sexual assault for a long time now. Today, Brock Turner is a free man. A judge ignored the horror of the crime. He ignored the voice of the victim, such an eloquent voice. And he ignored the moral and the legal duty to impose a just punishment. 90 days in jail for rape is not justice. 6 months is not justice. To the courageous survivor, your message not only touched our hearts, but it is a clarion call for action. We want you to know that you are not alone, that we are with you, and that we are going to see this through, to see justice is done. I believe Judge Persky's reckless and insensitive judgment requires accountability. And so I am calling today for Judge Aaron Persky to resign. And if the judge does not resign, then I am on this recall, and we are going to recall him. 2 days ago, I wrote a letter to the governor. There's a bill on his desk, Assembly Bill 2888. We need that bill to be signed by the governor. The governor must sign that bill. It would ensure the incarceration of violent sexual predators by setting mandatory minimum sentences for specified sex crimes. And make no mistake of it, law reform is very difficult. I started over 15 years ago trying to reform the military laws, making sure that sexual assault was a crime. They told me it couldn't be done, but with the help of my colleagues, we reformed, and we continue to reform that military culture that goes and attacks our women in particular. It is very sad today that today a woman is safer on our military bases in California than she is on college campuses in California. That's just not right. And so, let me say thank you to those in this recall effort. We just need to get this done, guys. Yes. It's time for real justice. And now, I would like to introduce Stephanie Pham.
Thank you, Congresswoman Loretta Sanchez. Hi, my name is Stephanie Pham, and I am the co-founder of the Stanford Association of Students for Sexual Assault Prevention, otherwise known as Stanford ASAP. Prior to the sentencing, my co-founder and I wrote a letter signed by nearly 300 members of the Stanford community asking Judge Persky to impose the minimum sentence of 2 years. We were afraid that granting Brock Turner probation would send the message that campus rape is not a serious crime. So I must say, it's frustrating that we are here today, that despite the amazing work of activists, advocates, and supporters, rape continues to be seen as some minor regrettable mistake instead of the heinous and violent offense that it is. Decisions like Judge Persky's are to blame for this continued normalization of violence against women. And now, we have a criminal's release from a 3-month time out after being found guilty for committing a crime that deserves years in prison. But the reality is, rape isn't some drunken accident. Rape is a crime. A crime that people need to be held accountable for. No special exceptions, no privileged biases, no excuses. When Brock Turner came into court, this was a test of our justice system. Could it ignore his privilege as a Stanford student, as an athlete, as a white man? And unfortunately, the answer Judge Persky has given us is no. Instead of upholding fairness, accountability, and equal justice, Judge Persky decided to excuse Brock Turner of sexual violence, inevitably undermining trust in the legal system at large, diminishing reporting of assaults, and making the Stanford community a more dangerous place for all.
That's right.
Instead of listening to those who need to be heard the most, Judge Persky has chosen to silence survivors, discouraging them from ever coming forward. Therefore, I urge you to support the recall of Judge Persky so we can work to deter rape on campuses, advocate for equal justice, and uphold the dignity of all survivors. Thank you. And now I would like to welcome California Assembly Member Nora Campos.
Today we are here to stand with Emily Doe. For whatever reason we came out today, we know that we're here because justice did not happen at 6 o'clock this morning. I don't know about many of you, but the first thing when I woke up this morning, I turned on the news, and what was the headlines? Showing Brock Turner walking out of the county jail in a nice suit with a little grin on his face, getting into a vehicle and driving off. I walked away with my stomach feeling very sick. As a woman in the state assembly, having served there for 6 years, passing laws that make sure that sexual assault gets its due process and that it becomes a crime. But I can pass all the bills along with all my colleagues, but if we do not have a justice system that is unbiased to make sure that those laws are followed and protect women's right, and when we say rape is rape, it is a crime no matter how it happens. No matter how it happens. And whether it's the woman that comes forward or somebody else that comes forward for her, it is still a crime. And when an individual, and Judge Persky, makes a decision to give him 6 months, where's the injustice in that for Emily Doe or the other women that are here? And then they decide that he only has to serve 3 months. And in county jail. He doesn't even have to go to prison. Where's the injustice? And where's the justice? Emily, we know that that was a hard journey for you, and your journey isn't over. But we came forward, and we're here today to make sure that your voice, along with all the other women that have been assaulted from a sex crime, are heard. We, as Santa Clara County residents and voters, are calling for you to resign.
Yes.
How more clear does that have to be?
Yes.
And to the women that are here today, I have to say, as a woman, and there's very few of us in the Assembly and in the Senate, Very few. You inspire me. It's why I wake up in the morning and drive 2 hours, leaving my 8-year-old son at home to be cared by my husband and my mother. Because you inspire me. If we do not have bold individuals in Sacramento that will speak up for the voiceless, then what good are we as a state? And let's talk about the other conversation that Emily Doe is forcing us to have. The conversation about privilege and being unprivileged, about color, about gender. The fact that an individual, and I don't need to say what his credentials were or uncredentials because it's been already stated. The fact that if you have the means and the financial benefits to be able to maneuver the system, then you serve less. Boo, absolutely boo. And if you don't have the financial means or you weren't born into the right class, then a different standard applies to you. Different standards. So Emily, you are bold, you're courageous, and you have forced Santa Clara County to start having a conversation. And it is so important that we do elect judges that are unbiased and that come from different backgrounds and that have the ability to look at rape as rape. And no excuse. Women and men across Santa Clara County, this is our issue. If we do not stand up and be bold and send a message to the rest of the nation, then the work of Emily Doe is for nothing. This is our time, this is our space, and we as Californians need to speak up and say no to Aaron Persky at the polls. It matters if you vote. It matters what you say. And if you vote no or don't touch his ballot, then we have sent a message to the rest of the nation that we will not have people elected that don't represent our values and that cannot be unbiased and that don't support that when we say rape is rape, rape is rape. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Pat Burt, and I'm the mayor of Palo Alto. This case strikes particularly close to home for me and for my community, because not only is Emily Doe a member of our community, but Judge Persky administers his biased and distorted sense of justice from a courtroom in our community. That distorted approach to empathizing with the perpetrators of these crimes rather than the victims creates a sense of injustice and undermines the entire faith of the community in the court system and the entire justice system. We need to not only have the community support this cause, but we need to have the legal community and his fellow justices recognize that their positions as protectors and administrators of justice is being undermined by allowing a judge to continue to have this sort of biased approach and injustices that are so prevalent in such a pattern. I don't come upon looking at a recall of a judge lightly, but this judge has an extensive pattern of bias, who has an empathy for perpetrators who are ones that he identifies with, and rather than protecting the interests of our community. So I think that there's one thing that we can also hope for, is we are all capable of change. And it is possible that Judge Persky also is capable of change. And there is one way that he can demonstrate that, and that is to accept responsibility and proclaim himself that that one act of integrity that he can do is to resign. And Judge Persky has the ability to become one of the many people in our society who reflects on our own shortcomings, our own biases, and moves and grows beyond them. And so I call on not only Judge Persky to resign, but for his colleagues on the bench to stand up for integrity that they know is right and not hide behind a claim of judicial independence when they know that judicial independence is undermined by judicial bias that Judge Persky has presented. So I'd now like to introduce Ro Khanna, an outstanding member of our community and candidate for the 17th Congressional District. Thank you, Ro.
Thank you. I'm Ro Khanna, and I teach economics at Stanford and am running to represent a large part of Santa Clara County. I want to just thank Michelle Dauber, a colleague at Stanford, and her courage in making this a national issue, and it wasn't easy with the administration, so thank you, Michelle. Like many of you, I'm here to support the recall of Judge Persky. But this is not just about one individual or one case. I read yesterday in Minnesota, a judge had given a light sentence to someone for rape, 6 years. And you know, when they talk about judicial independence, the question we ought to ask is this. If someone were sentenced for 3 months for murder, there would be outrage. If someone was sentenced for 3 months for drinking and driving and killing a pedestrian, there would be outrage. Yeah. So the question isn't about one judge or one case, it's about Santa Clara's values. These judges are elected, and recalling them is about what we stand for. Yes. And what we want to send a message to young men and young women. Is this a slap on the wrist? Is this like cheating on an exam where you get suspended? Is it like a speeding violation? Or is this something that our county is going to say is unconscionable and is wrong, and we send that message to young men and women? That's what this recall is about. I don't think we personalize it. It's about standing for the right values in this country. Let me end with one note. One of my favorite philosophers, Martha Nussbaum, is a distinguished professor at University of Chicago, had a brilliant piece in Huffington Post. She talked about her sexual assault, and she talked when she was 20 years old, and she said, we have a different, she never reported it because it was a famous actor. And she said, we have this different standard for actors, you know, Bill Cosby, and athletes, and people in government, and people who are on TV. And that's a hard thing for a society to overcome. But here in the Bay Area, here in Santa Clara County, by recalling this judge, we can send a message that the rule of law applies, that some people don't get special treatment. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Bob Livengood. I am the former mayor of the city of Milpitas, and I served as an elected official for 30 years here in Santa Clara County. I want to first say that I am so impressed by these survivors that have come here. Their bravery is amazing. And it is for them that I'm here today. I also want to say that we are very fortunate, those of us who are going to help with this recall of Judge Persky, to have somebody like Michelle Dauber as our captain. Yeah. So, Michelle, it has been a pleasure to have met you and briefly have worked with you, and we have a lot of more work to do. I found out about this Judge Persky case, this Brock Turner case, like many people did. I was reading the newspaper and watching the television. And when I heard that this young man received a sentence of 6 months, I said incredulously to myself, you've got to be kidding me. I know for a fact that there are people in this jail and other jails in Santa Clara County that serve more time than that for driving on a suspended driver's license. Where is the justice there? It doesn't exist. So for me, I had to make a decision. Was I going to stay on my couch and just be a bystander, or was I going to do something? And I decided to do something and to join all of you in this effort. Now, I can tell you that, as it's been mentioned already, recalls are hard things to do. They're not easy. But those of us who live here in this county, who understand the injustice involved in all this, trust me when I say, when we reach out to them, they're going to follow us in this effort, and we're going to be successful in removing Judge Persky from office in the next year. Now, you heard today from some state officials, outstanding public servants, and one of the things that they do is they run our state prison system. They fund it, they build them, they're responsible for it. Well, let me tell you something. I know a little bit about law enforcement, having spent 20 years in it, and I can tell you that state prisons are built for people like Brock Turner. That's why they are there. And it's time that we make sure that there, as somebody has mentioned, there are no more get-out-of-jail-free cards issued here in Santa Clara County, and we move forward. Now, I have one other thing I want to say. There are some great elected officials here today, but there's many, many, many more elected officials in this county, members of the board, school board, mayors, council members, who you don't see here today. Well, I have a message for them. You're going to hear from us. We are going to make you take a stand. You're either with this recall or you're against it. And ladies and gentlemen, if you want to be on the right side, elected officials, mayors, boards of supervisors, school boards, then join me, join Mayor Burt and many other local officials in making sure that we, as the congressman has said, give Judge Persky his early release. Thank you very much.
Yeah, they don't make these for people my height. Okay. My name is Geraldine Stapleton, and I'm the president of the California National Organization for Women, which is commonly known as NOW. Thank you. I also happen to be a survivor and a survivor victim of sexual assault and domestic violence, but I'm here today to represent California Now. As you know, violence in America is epidemic and totally out of control. The culture of rape must stop, and we need to look at preventative measures for this. I do not want to hear another story like this one. It breaks my heart every time that one of these stories comes about. And what about all the ones that we don't hear about? You know, thanks to Michelle, you know, this is getting a big voice, and which is needed, because with the culture of rape, it just seems like it's a normal thing for, unfortunately, males, especially on the campuses, and especially the ones that belong to certain clubs or they belong in the athletic division, you know, on campus, seem to think that they have a right to do whatever they want to. And I like what Senator DeLeon said, that, you know, the men really need to come together, because making this a part of being part of the old boys club, that you have to treat women in this manner, has got to stop. This has not got to be one of the things that you need to do to belong to the old boys club, because you're going to be fathers, there's brothers, and the impact of this is not just directly, it falls out to the immediate family, you know, and the community. The community also is affected. It feels very unsafe. My opinion, we really need to do research to find the root cause of what causes a person to behave in a manner that does harm, that is so long-lasting to other human beings. So as long as the boys will be boys mindset continues, the men will be getting off with a slap on the wrist, and this is not okay. Perpetrators need to know the harm that they cause the victims and need to be held accountable. The wounds heal, but the scars are there for a lifetime. Brock Turner being released after 3 months is a joke. And to compare 3 months to a lifetime, there's something really, really wrong with that. It just makes it more difficult for the victim to heal when they're not either believed or they end up going through all it takes to report it, going through that, also the court proceedings, and then to end up with the person getting off with 3 months. Not acceptable at all. So I do want to acknowledge Michelle for doing this, and I also want to give a shout out to Kim Sontag Mulder, our VP of Programming, who has taken the lead on this issue. She also happens to be the president of San Diego now chapter that's been very active on dealing with the rape on campuses down there. So one last thing, you can really help by calling the governor, emailing him, going on his website. There's a bill by Senator Leyva, SB 813. This will end the statute of limitations on rape. So if a person does need a longer time to heal and be able to come forward, they will be able to do so and get justice. So when do we want justice? Now! Thank you.
For more information about the campaign, please visit recallpersky.com. Thank you very much for coming today.